don't be adding stuff to it if it doesn't need it.
Yeah.
And likewise, if it looks like it's foundering and going slowly, then just, take a measured approach to it, add nutrient, go minimal. I'm a big believer in you can add stuff to, but you can't take stuff out once it's in.
Yeah.
So just go a little bit at a time, kind of nudge it up and see how things are going.
I have to laugh sometimes because I see some of these recipes on these various web pages out there, and they don't specify the yeast. They just say pitch your wine yeast, or just in the recipe list just says wine yeast, and then it comes to the you want to do a staggered nutrient feeding, every other day for 3 days. Well, and people read this, and I can tell you from my own experience that I've had yeast that, from start to finish in 48 hours, and then it's a done deal. So
Right.
It's a very fast acting yeast, and I'm at the bottom end of the fermentation in 48 hours. So in every other day feeding,
Never going to happen. Yeah.
You want to be careful where you're getting your information, what recipes you're reading, and if you can contact the author, get more. What kind of wine yeast? There's hundreds of available wine yeast out there. Which one? So
right, and that's where it gets back to doing your diligence on matching your yeast to your honey and what kind of mead you want to make and what kind of flavors you can expect out of it, or at least you can kind of judge will probably come out of it.
And talk about this list of questions goes on. Talking about each batch, given 2 packets of yeast hydrated with water and nutrient 1 hour before pitching. I'm not quite sure. You have I don't know if this is taken directly from the submission, but 2 packages of Saison ale yeast, 2 packages of Lalvin 71B, 2 packages of Lalvin D40s. Tell me that all didn't go into one.
No, it's what they did was they split this into three batches, and then they inoculated each with
Gotcha.
2 packages of Saison ale yeast, 2 packages of 71B, and 2 packages or 2 packets or sachets of D47. Now, I personally know what those sachet sizes are. They're 5 grams each from Lalvin. I don't know which Saison ale yeast to use. Whose Saison ale yeast. And so I don't know, which specific yeast it was and how many grams were used. And so just because you say, hey, I used 2 packets of Lalvin 71B, doesn't mean that everybody's going to know that those are 2 5-gram packets. And just the same way up above, each batch was given 2 packets of yeast hydrated with water and nutrient 1 hour before pitching. Well, I know that the 71B and the D47 don't call for that kind of rehydration protocol. As a matter of fact, I can tell you right now that if you treat your Lalvin yeast like that, you're not going to get them starting up very fast out of the gate. You don't rehydrate any more than 15 minutes before you use them, 71B or D47. And, for each packet, they go into a 50 ml batch of water that's 104 degrees. You stir it, you let it sit for 15 minutes, you give it another stir, and then you inoculate. If you're using GoFirm, which is a rehydration nutrient specific to Lallemand, who manufactures Lalvin yeast, then there's a protocol that you follow for that as well. You mix it in at 111 degrees, you let it sit, let it come down to 104, you add your yeast to it, mix that in, make sure there's no clumps, let it sit for 15 minutes, come back, give it another stir, and then it goes in. But an hour beforehand means that the yeasts, when their active dry yeast is made, it's turned into these little granules that have biotin and other nutrients in them for rehydration. But once they're rehydrated, they've exhausted that nutrient. And if they're just sitting in a suspension of water where you put the yeast in with whatever nutrient that was used, it's not a specific rehydration nutrient, they're just going to start going like, well, there's nothing here to eat, so I guess I'm dead. over they go.
Yeah.
And so it's very important to follow the instructions, to familiarize yourself with the instructions, and to, get good at rehydrating your yeast in the proper way.
Yeah. And then, of course, the next part, tasting notes. I mean, and this goes all the way back up to Bernard Smith, the question he was asking about, aromas and smells, that kind of thing. Kind of already had that discussion, but, briefly, I mean, and he's talking about D47 here, by far the best honey smells, fruit notes, and low fusel flavors. But then, what did you smell? What did it smell like?
Right, exactly. Honey smell. Okay, well, gosh, that's a pretty wide category description there. Honey can smell everything from like, barnyard to cinnamon to marshmallow to sage. I mean, it can have tons of different aromas and flavors. So what is the specific honey aroma that you're addressing there? Fusel flavors, I suspect that when somebody says, "Oh, it's got honey smells or honey aromas," okay, what kind? And then they say in the next sentence, low fusel flavors. I'm kind of wondering what those specific flavors are, and looking for descriptions. And if I'm not getting them, I'm kind of wondering what it is that they might be tasting that they might be mistaking for fusel flavors. So, and I'm not capping on this at all. I'm just saying I'm just pointing out that, the questions that you're asking really need to be as accurate as you can get them as well. Hey, I smelled this, I smelled this, I smelled this. This honey has kind of a spicy aroma to it. It's a little bit musty, but the spice prevails. I can definitely smell the honey kind of character in it, and maybe a little bit of citrus. And those fusel flavors I was getting, it smells almost diesel-y or oily, and so those are, kinds of things in the flavor and the aroma that you'd be looking for and the descriptions. So, and honestly, if I'm reading a description that says fusel in it, I'm thinking that the fermentation was run hot, but we don't have any temperature or pH readings that I can go back and verify that on and say, hey, look, it looks like your fermentation was running too hot, so cool it down.
Yeah.
So that's why we need the description. That's why it's so important to write down everything about your batch that you can. And if you think you're writing too much, you're probably not. So, take the time, get out the paper, write down your observations, and observe, really, really well. Your job is to catch anything and everything you can about that batch and translate it to paper so that when there's a problem, you can say, hey, this is what I did, this is what I saw. And somebody who knows, working with the yeast that you're using and the honey that you're using, you go through that list and go, there we are right there. Look, your temperature is at 78 degrees. This is a cool weather yeast and you're fermenting at 78 going up into the 80s. It's not going to handle that well. So you got to manage your temperature next time.
And then, Mead B, looks like he ranks the, his three, D47 being the best, then 71B, least favorite being the Saison, and then comes a question. I'm not quite sure where this goes, but D47, I'm going to keep the straight mead and see what age does to this already good tasting mead, and then Saison and 71B with question marks. So not quite.
Yeah, it's not surprising to me that Saison yeast is his least favorite. Not a yeast that I'd ever choose to make mead with. So, and let me just say, in that particular comment, the Saison being least favorite, he goes on to say that tasted and smelled yeasty and a little funky, that he could taste a hint of honey and could imagine what it'd be like when aged, but it definitely needs time. See, now that's a lot better description than just like honey aroma and low fusel.
Right.
Okay, that gives me a little bit more to work with there, and that's why I said, Saison wouldn't be a yeast that I'd use in making mead. Saisons tend to have some pretty intense, character to them. Everything from astringent to spicy to funky to, and not really the things that I want to have in my mead. But again, hey, I've actually tasted some Saison fermented mead that turned out really, really well. So, it doesn't mean not to try it. What it means is to get good at what you're doing first and then try some more esoteric stuff. Yeah. Now for the question. Said, going to keep D47 as a straight mead. I'm guessing he means that he's going to, treat that as a traditional mead and just leave it alone and let it age, which I applaud. And then it looks like they were asking, but what should I do with the 7-1B and the Saison? Well, I don't know. I don't have good enough notes to go on as far as what the flavors are and what the aromas are. I see that he's, thinking of adding 3 cans of frozen white grape juice and 10 pounds of frozen peaches. If you suggested 7-1B, but it's been nearly 2 months since the first pitch. So now I get an idea that it's 2 months old. Is that too late to be adding fruit, he asks. And, what would this do? And again, I can't really say because I don't know. I don't have comprehensive enough notes to really make a call on that. What I told them to do was to just wait before they did anything to it and just let these meads settle down and clear up and stabilize first. I got a message this morning saying that they'd already gone ahead and done the things that he's suggesting there with the frozen white grape juice, and I'm not sure about the peaches. I don't remember seeing that mentioned in there. But again, one of the things that I'm always talking about is patience, patience, patience. Be patient enough to let the stuff develop a little bit before you start tweaking it, especially when you're completely new to something. It's kind of like, learning to drive a car and then, you've driven in a straight line and you've learned how to make a right turn and a left turn, and then all of a sudden you want to put the car in reverse and do the same thing, on the surface street. And that's only going to lead to bad things.
Yeah.
So, observe, practice, observe, practice, observe, practice, take good notes. And then you can start, getting esoteric and adding some cool things. But, it's not a popular thing to say. People are impatient. We were having a conversation before we even started this, the session up today to talk about these things. But people, in our culture, our present culture of information at the fingertips instantly, think that everything can happen instantly. And,
right.
It's very different with, art. And mead is art just as much as it is science. And so that means having the patience to know when to make changes, to know when to do things to it. And that's where the art comes in, to be able to, provide sensory analysis on what it is you're making to the point of where you're armed with, good knowledge of how the meat is progressing and the direction it's going, so that you can apply some of that art out of your experience and your ability to, take your batches and kind of adjust them as they progress into something that's really wonderful. And so, a major part of that is patience. You're going to make mistakes? Yes, everybody does. And, I have too. But the big thing about those is when you make a mistake, learn from it, take notes on what you did wrong, and then dump it down the drain if it's not drinkable. Don't take it out and share it around. Yeah, this one didn't turn out too well, but I thought you should taste it anyhow. That's how mead gets a really bad reputation.
Yeah.
And people don't get that. Don't take shitty mead out to a bunch of your friends and say, "Hey, this is mead." It's shitty
another
mead.
One.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've just about covered everything, Pete. These sessions, they just keep getting, we're already 47 minutes, almost 48 minutes into this thing. They just keep going on and on and on. But I'll tell you what valuable information these Ask Oscar sessions give us. And any final thoughts?
Yeah, well, I'll have to wait and see. This is to Mead. B, don't feel like you're overwhelmed there, and B, don't feel bad about this batch or anything like that. It's first effort, and you're not any different than anyone else. I hear it from people all the time. I tried this, but it didn't work, and it just freaked me out, so I tried this, and that didn't work either. Hey, I did the same thing when I was starting. But the nice thing about having somebody to ask these questions to is that you can save yourself the heartache and the hassle. Just, apply a little bit of patience, ask the question and wait for an answer before you dive in. It's kind of like, walking up to shark-infested waters and, jumping right in rather than watching somebody else jump in and get eaten by the shark first.